From the not even remotely surprising but true department, Iowa All-American Tyler Linderbaum, the Remington Trophy winner, is the nation's best center, announcing today he is headed to the NFL draft. Linderbaum, widely considered to be the best center prospect to come out of college football in years. He is a certain first-round pick. Busy night in women's hoops last night in the Big Ten. The biggest showdown went to Indiana, playing without the injured Mackenzie Holmes. They still managed to hold off Nebraska. The stars were shining as well. Caitlin Clark, Veronica Burton, Naz Hillman, all leading their teams to victory. Megan McEwen is joining us. She was in Bloomington to call that game, Nebraska and Indiana. She's made her way back up I-65 to join us. Got another game tonight. She's got another game tomorrow. Hardest working woman in show business. Appreciate you spending a few minutes with us.
Absolutely.
Let's talk first about Indiana and to win without Mackenzie Holmes, and she's got a knee injury. It is unclear how long she is going to be out. To say this is not a deep team to begin with would be an understatement. How big an issue is this for the Hoosiers?
The Hoosiers didn't find out about Mackenzie Holmes' status until yesterday before this game, so no word on how long she's going to be out. And she leads the team in scoring and rebounding with 18 points, 8 rebounds. I was so impressed with how this Indiana team stepped up in her absence. Multiple players, including Alexa Gulbe, who does average double figures for this team. However, she was so good on the defensive side of the ball, really slowing down Nebraska. Keep in mind, this is the most veteran team in the Big Ten. Indiana has 5 starters that returned from a year ago. They had that Elite 8 experience together, and all 5 starters average double figures. So that experience means the talent level doesn't drop off drastically, despite not having Mackenzie Holmes.
Okay, but that being said, they only played 6 players last night.
Fair,
right?
But they can get away with that.
No, I guess I'm asking you. You know, I mean, I have no idea. I'm asking you. Like, I look at that and I say, is that sustainable? I mean, kind of the narrative all year has been they returned this great starting 5, they made the Elite 8, but is their bench good enough? They've had a couple players leave the team. I mean, it just feels like, can they sustain her being out for a long period?
It's sustainable because of the way that Indiana plays. They slow down the pace of play to their favor. And so holding teams to under 60 points a game allows Indiana to run everything, control how the game's going to go offensively and defensively. Terry Morin is one of the best coaches in the league when it comes to scouting and scout-specific strategies. So as a result, Indiana can slow it down. They can play multiple players for 30 minutes. I don't know if they necessarily want to, but that's the way they're going to play. And they've been able to really fluster teams as a result.
Okay, so they head to Purdue coming up on Sunday, and again, we'll see how long Mackenzie Holmes is out, but that's going to be a huge storyline in the league. I don't want to neglect Nebraska because they have been a really big story this year, and that was a game where it felt like for a little while there it might get a little out of hand, and yet they battled and battled. This is a team that not a ton of people expected a whole lot about. They have that signature win over Michigan this year. What did you see from Nebraska last night?
First off, Nebraska can score the ball. They were averaging 100 points to start out the season, so multiple players can step up and score the ball. The emergence of freshman forward Alexis Markowski has been massive for the Huskers. She's 6'3". She's a traditional post player, that back-to-the-basket presence that forces defenses to collapse. And Nebraska is shooting the ball great from 3 throughout the season. They rank in the top 5 in the Big Ten from that percentage. She's averaged 17 points over the course of the last 3 games, and she's forced defenses to have to adjust the way they scout Nebraska. So her emergence as a force to be reckoned with, she got Indiana into a little bit of foul trouble last night, and that's when Nebraska was able to make a run back and cut it to 3 in the 4th quarter. Indiana, however, that veteranship, were able to hang on.
National Freshman of the Week this week and got herself into that starting lineup really through injury. And you wonder whether she's going to ever be out of this starting lineup again. I mean, that's a tough call right there. She is a really good player. They've got another challenge. They have to play Iowa now for the 2nd time in a week. You got to deal with Caitlin Clark. What do you see with that matchup?
Well, that final score, they played Sunday, Nebraska and Iowa. It was 95-86. And talk about getting your running shoes on and going back and forth. Those teams both like to play with a ton of pace. So to have to turn around and play this game again, my concern with Nebraska, Sam Hybee went out with a shoulder injury in that game last night against Indiana. So I'm not sure what her status is going to be for that game headed into Sunday. But once again, when you're a player and you lose to a team like that in that manner, you want to get back and play as fast as possible. So Nebraska has another opportunity to get a crack at this Iowa team. And a player like Caitlin Clark, who dropped 33 in that game. Iowa's big 3 got the job done. If Nebraska can find a way to slow down Monica Sonano or McKenna Warnock, I think that Nebraska could pull this off.
Let's talk a little bit about this Iowa team, and Caitlin Clark is clearly the headliner here. The Wooden Top 25 came out this week, and of course she is on it. Paige Bueckers is out for a prolonged period of time.
Yeah.
And, you know, Paige Bueckers, you kind of come into the year and you just say, well, Paige Bueckers is going to be National Player of the Year. She's probably not going to be this year. I mean, who knows, right? Maybe she limps back out onto the court and somehow has, you know...
Crazier things have happened.
Crazier things. You never say never, in sports. It's highly unlikely that Paige Bueckers is the Player of the Year. Can Caitlin Clark win this thing?
Well, keep in mind, Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers were co-freshmen of the year last year. If Clark continues to play at this pace, I think she definitely could. Player of the Year is essentially a scoring award, and right now she's leading the nation in scoring with more than 25 points per game. What impresses me most about Caitlin Clark is not just her scoring piece, it's her facilitating piece as well. She's averaging 7 assists per game. That leads the Big Ten, and she's averaging 8 boards as well. So she's more than just a scorer. Yes, she's really exciting by hitting logo 3. She's crafty with the ball and can create so much in the paint, but her ability to get her teammates in positions to score is what makes her a Player of the Year talk-worthy.
Speaking of people who get their teammates in position to score, the Wooden Award Top 25 included 5 Big Ten players, including Caitlin Clark. It did not include Veronica Burton, which just seems like an unbelievable oversight to me. She is fabulous with a really young team that has an injury issue, and yet there they are. I mean, they're very much in the hunt. They went to Iowa and won. How much does Veronica Burton mean to Northwestern, and how in the world does she get left off that list?
Northwestern point guard Veronica Burton is the most underrated player in all of college basketball. She does so much for her team, but as an individual player, she's averaging 18 points a game. She, against that Iowa team, had 8 steals. She is the 2-time Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten, and she does absolutely everything to get Northwestern in a position to win games. She doesn't get the recognition she deserves because she's not a flashy player. She puts her lunch pail in, her hard hat on, and she does everything possible for her team to win. And she doesn't do it necessarily in that whole entire points per game way. She's not all over social media knocking down these crazy logo 3s or getting super crafty looks in the paint, but yet she does everything this team needs to win. She's averaging, again, 18 points, 6 assists, 4 steals. That's second in the nation. So for her to do everything, including on the defensive side of the ball, it's ridiculous that nationally it gets overlooked because she is a WNBA player and she has lots of pro attention right now. And teams think in the WNBA that she can come in and she is ready to run a team because she plays with so much poise.
I had a chance to talk to Northwestern's head coach, Joe McEwen, the other day. You may know him well. And
Heard of him.
Yeah, and to hear him sing her praises. I mean, just the importance of her to this team. And yeah, it's crazy. But again, there are award snubs all throughout.
And players who work really hard and just come in and don't necessarily do that in that flashy way deserve to get recognized.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Biggest game of this weekend, Michigan and Maryland on Sunday. They both have just 1 loss in the league. It's a huge game, no doubt. What should we be focused on?
Well, this is going to be a fantastic game because both of these teams have the ability to still win the Big Ten. It's so early. We got a lot of time left. It's only mid-January. Michigan, a team with the star power of Naz Hillman. Maryland hasn't hit its stride yet because they're still getting players back who have dealt with some injuries. Diamond Miller's kind of getting into her 5th or 6th game back from an injury. I'm curious to see who's going to win this ball game because it's going to completely control the tempo headed into the second half of the Big Ten slate from a perspective of who can win the league as a whole. First of 2 meetings they'll play again in late February. Ohio State, really good week. We were mentioning Northwestern. They won at Northwestern. That game was not particularly close. They had fallen out of the top 25, losses to Indiana and Michigan. Do you believe Ohio State is still in this Big Ten race? I do. Ohio State's in this Big Ten race because they can score. And anytime a team can score at the clip of which Ohio State can, you have a shot to win a lot of games. J.C. Sheldon is averaging she had 25 points earlier this week. She's averaging about 20 a game. Taylor Mikesell as well is shooting the ball exceptionally well from 3, over 40%. So Ohio State has that guard firepower, and they like to play really fast, and it catches teams off guard. They press you. They can turn you over. Any team that can get it done offensively and defensively can make a run at winning a Big Ten title. If they are going to win it, they have a huge game coming up next Thursday against Maryland at home. That's one of those games, right? I mean, you're playing
other elite teams in the league, the teams that are above you in the league, you got to defend home court.
That's going to be a fast-paced game. I mean, you better be in shape if you're going to come and play in Maryland, Iowa, all these teams.
Gotta be in shape to watch it, too, right? Just sweating on the couch.
Just put like your Apple Watch on and see how many steps you get in watching. Might happen.
Megan McEwen, great stuff. Have a great call tonight. And again, really appreciate you making the drive and hanging out with us this morning. Looking ahead to the Big Ten hoop schedule this weekend, it includes two ranked teams in action tonight. Purdue hosting Nebraska and Illinois taking on Michigan. That'll be the first we have seen of the Wolverines in 10 days since their COVID pause. Those games are on FS1. We have doubleheaders here on the Big Ten Network tomorrow and Sunday. Ranked teams in action both days, Michigan State and Ohio State. It is always fun to welcome in Brendan Quinn from The Athletic. And Brendan, you are dialed in with Michigan. I realize you cover the whole country, but you especially know the Wolverines and Michigan State quite well. So I just want to start with Michigan because I think there's so much intrigue here. Do you have any sense of what this Michigan team is going to look like in terms of who's going to be available, players, coaches tonight?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is one of those games back in the old beat writing days where you would make sure you're at the gym 2 hours before tip-off, with the roster, checking off names of who actually shows up. That's kind of the point that things have gotten with Michigan. And I'm not sure. I've not had exact names confirmed yet. Now, I assume at this point Michigan knows who they're rolling out and who they're not. But after what happened last week, Dave, when we talked about this time last Friday, we were talking about that Michigan State game like it was going to happen. And lo and behold, woke up at 7 o'clock the next morning to a phone filled with messages, and that game did not happen. So I'll believe it when I see it tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Juwan Howard said yesterday, we've got 7 healthy scholarship players and a healthy coach, which is the minimum. And I think some people inferred from that he meant that was the total of what they had. And then they clarified later saying, that's just the minimum. We have more than that. So he was just saying they're at the threshold. Yes. For a game. So right. It's going to be. I mean, who knows? It's going to be. It's a tough enough assignment to begin with, right? Because Illinois is really good, and you're on the road in Champaign. You got to deal with Kofi, and you might not have a full roster. It's a tough assignment.
Yeah, and even beyond the point of which bodies are out there, let's assume everyone's available for the sake of argument. I'm equally as interested to see if Michigan is different, how it actually looks in terms of personnel, because clearly what was being done rotation-wise, playing-wise, wasn't working for a stretch of time. And this, whatever you want to call it, a COVID pause, did it serve as any kind of reset of, okay, let's think differently about things. Let's maybe try using Diabate more as a backup 5 and maybe take him out of that 4 spot a little bit more. And maybe try Caleb Houston at the 4. Maybe go a little bit smaller. This might not be the game to do it because of what Illinois is, but how do they actually look is just as curious as who's playing, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I guess, look, time will tell. I mean, we'll figure some stuff out here tonight, but there's also the question mark of, COVID, you're sick, if you're sick.
Yeah.
And, depending on how many of these guys had symptoms, I mean, we have heard some players say, hey, it beat me up a little bit. Some guys have said it wasn't a big deal at all. I mean, it just varies from person to person, as we're certainly well aware at this point in this pandemic. But for some of them, they could still be dragging. Juwan Howard used the word unorthodox to describe their practices. So the implication is not everyone was available. You mentioned a couple things. I want to get off Michigan because I do want to talk about some other stuff. But summarize very briefly, what do you think it would take for Michigan to make a run, not just tonight, but to be a team that maybe can compete for the NCAA title? What has to change here? Or
it has to start on the defensive end and just a level of defensive competency at this point, as not even being an elite defensive team, but they just need to be a decent defensive team because they've been poor for stretches of time. So you got to start on the defensive end. Offensively, they need to find some continuity and better rotations that work, better shot selection, better point guard play, better 3-point shooting, getting the ball to Hunter Dickinson in better positions to score. So that's not one, that's maybe a few, but that's what it's going to take. You talk about making a run toward a top 4 or 5 finish in the league. It is not, these 2 things or these 2 guys. It's it's a multitude of things.
Yeah, I'm with you. No, there's a lot there. And I mean, to make the tournament at this point would be a huge accomplishment, no doubt.
Right.
Michigan State, of course, was a first four team last year. So, maybe that's part of maybe that's something you shoot for if you're Michigan. And we see how much Michigan State has improved this year. You told me you're going to see them play tomorrow in person against Northwestern. I do think it's fair to point out, I mean, they're undefeated in the league right now. They have not exactly played a murderer's row schedule to this point. Again, they won at Northwestern. They beat Minnesota a couple times. I mean, you kind of go down the list. It hasn't been overwhelming. How good do you think Michigan State truly is? Do we know at this point?
Well, the non-conference schedule was pretty legitimate. Their two losses were Kansas and Baylor, and then some good wins against Loyola Chicago, UConn, a few others. But yes, to your point, I agree. You want to see them play Purdue, Illinois, Wisconsin at this point, just to see really where they are in terms of being a conference title contender. Like, I think without a doubt, Michigan State is a top 20 team in the country, a likely top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. But there's a difference between that and actually going after a conference championship. And that we need to see. This weekend against Northwestern is kind of just another one. And Northwestern almost got them in Evanston. That's a game that Chris Collins is going to look back on however the season goes, and is going to really bother them that they could have had that game, and who knows what would have happened after that. But Michigan State stole it. They've won a lot of games that they found ways to lose games last year. They're finding ways to win games this year. And I agree with you, though. I want to see it against really good Big Ten teams, and then we'll see. But what they've done so far, pretty impressive. It's easy to lose bad games in this league. Bad games being by context of the standings.
I'm with you. Wisconsin is a really interesting one as well, and I'd say they're kind of the inverse because, man, their resume is starting to look really, really impressive. As of last night, they had 7 Quad 1 wins. I think when the new net rankings came out today, I think it's down to 6 Quad 1 wins. But either way, it is the most in the country. How surprised are you by what's going on with Wisconsin?
Considering I picked them like 8th in the league, I'm pretty darn surprised, Dave. But the thing in terms of recently what we're seeing, like if you would have told me in the beginning of the year, Johnny Davis is going to be a first-team All Big Ten guy, I could buy that. That's would seem feasible to me. But what we're seeing of late is where a team that was really good, and when I saw them live in Vegas, that was a team that had Johnny Davis and a team around him, something resembling a team around him. And what we're seeing only a month after that now is Johnny Davis being, an All-American candidate, and suddenly real pieces developing around him. Brad Davis is playing really well. Obviously last night was a career night, but overall just his efficiency numbers as a scorer are dramatically improved from last year. And then guys like Tyler Wall, Tyler Wall is a legit piece right now that, you can't ignore and that more people should be talking about. Another guy, Stephen Crowell, like nobody's mentioning Stephen Crowell, but if you go back and look at Wisconsin last year, especially at the 5 position, that it never really worked. Micah Potter, Nate Reavers, it was always this question, can they play together? Should only one be playing the 5? And Stephen Crowell played 5 minutes of Big Ten basketball last year. And now he's playing about 24 minutes a game and has been really, really impressive. He gives them a lot of stuff. He's a true 7-footer who's developing, a sophomore, and just kind of quietly doing his job. And if you have guys who do that and you have a legit star like Johnny Davis, you can do some stuff. And that's what you're seeing from Wisconsin at this point. And between the quality of the defense and some of these other pieces evolving offensively for that team, you're starting to see a group that is, I don't think it's a flash in the pan. I think this is legit. I'm with you. They just get better and better, too. They're such a good developmental program. They get better from year to year. To your point, Stephen Crowell, obviously Johnny Davis has emerged, and then they get better within seasons, usually. That tends to be how it goes with Wisconsin. But, man, they're really good. Who do you see as the best team in the Big Ten right now? I mean, at any given time, I think it's kind of a toss-up between Illinois and Purdue still for me. Long-term, I buy Purdue. right now, I think Illinois is probably playing the best in the league, even without Curbelo. And obviously he's going to be worked back, and we'll see how that changes certain dynamics at play. But long-term, my buy is still Purdue. It's only mid-January. And if by late February, Purdue's the one that's cooking and everyone's playing catch up, that's when I'll come back on. I'll say, I told you so. And if not, then just don't invite me back on.
We're going to invite you back on, whether you like it or not. Last question for you. Who's a team that we're not talking about that you think could make some noise down the stretch?
Ooh, man. Maybe in Ohio State, it's kind of going a little bit under the radar. It's kind of the way Ohio State has gone in recent years sometimes. But, you know, they lose a couple games and you forget about them, and then you watch them play. You remember they have E.J. Liddell and some legit pieces that, you know, late down the stretch could be dangerous. But there's so much in the middle in this league right now that it's going to take a couple weeks, I think, to kind of hammer this thing out. I mean, there are plenty of teams you don't want to play, though. Whether they're a long-term buy or not, I don't know. But like Minnesota, I don't care what their record is. You don't want to play Minnesota. So there's a lot of that, too, in this league.
USA Hockey announcing its Olympic roster yesterday. It includes 5 players from the Big Ten, 2 from Michigan and 3 from Minnesota. Now, if you haven't been following, the NHL announced in December it was opting out of the games due to COVID, wanting to finish the season on time. They're going to use that time that would have been the Olympic pause to make up some games. So it is a very young roster. In fact, it is the youngest for the U.S. since 1994. It includes 5 teenagers. Big Ten hockey analyst Paul Caponegri joins us. And let's start with Minnesota and Michigan and these players now that are not going to be playing with them. These are the 2 top teams in the Big Ten.
Right.
We're here in the middle of the season. What does this mean for these teams, Paul?
It's big. You know, they lost some of those guys to the World Junior Championships in December, but those got cut short because of COVID. And they only played 1 game. They missed 2 games. Minnesota, they didn't miss any games because they had a long Christmas break. It's interesting. And to couple those guys, the other 2 guys, there's 2 more guys. Owen Power, the number 1 pick in the draft last year, and the number 5, Kent Johnson, that are most likely going to make Team Canada.
Right. Canada hasn't annoued its roster, right? So,
but
there could be more to this.
Right.
Yeah,
and it's trending that way. We'd be probably shocked if they didn't.
Okay.
So you're losing, Michigan losing 4, Minnesota 3, and they're at the top of the standings, and they're going to miss first 3 weeks of February, I think, is what it's projected. You know, it's still not sure, and that's banking on the fact that they don't get stuck in China. So there's a lot of things going on. Dave, it's wild. And so 6 games, 6 to maybe 8, or to, you know, and then you're getting close to March. And then that's, you know, March Madness time and playoffs that. So it's really hard to say. Both teams have a lot of depth, clearly why they're top teams. But they're not losing, you know, they're losing top guys. That's the reason why they're going to the Olympics.
The Olympics team doesn't tend to take mediocre players, right?
Right. So, you know, it's going to be interesting. And the one thing that's so tricky with this, yes, the Big Ten, but the league goes, or the country for the tournament goes on computer rankings and whatnot, the pairwise, to decide getting into the tournament, kind of like BCS was in football. Well, the computer doesn't put into the fact matter.
This is exactly what I was going to ask.
4 and 3 players. Yeah. So
is there any talk at all that? I mean, I think there are a lot of people who would love to see college basketball's tournament, you know, go that way. I mean, there's a lot to be said.
There's less opinion.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for kind of this is what it is, but sometimes...
But then everyone's going to yell at the computer.
Yeah, sometimes there's a little more art than science. I mean, This feels like it is just screaming for them to say, wait a minute. Now, you're talking about... And it's not just the Big Ten, to your point. It's the whole country. Right? I mean, it's impacting everyone.
Yeah.
But to just say, hey, who were the teams that were impacted here? And is there some way that we can tweak the formula? Is there any talk of that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. And I think that's just way out of, like...
Right.
The thoughts in mind. They want to keep it as simple as possible. But, you know, I think these teams can survive. Now, maybe they drop and don't get, like Michigan right now would most likely be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Minnesota's a 2. Maybe they drop back. And then these teams that maybe they slide in as 4 seeds and then number 1s are like, what? You know, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? Obviously, hockey's more of a team sport. You know, the individuals, they can survive, but 6 to 8 games is a lot to lose such talent. Like, you know, Owen Power is I think he is the best player in college hockey. He should be. He's a 19-year-old sophomore. He was the number 1 pick in the draft last year, and he's lived up to that. You're going to lose him for 6 games. You're gonna slide a little, or you're not going to be as effective over time. You know, you can survive maybe a weekend with that, but 6 games is tough. So I'm excited for these guys. I mean, who wouldn't want to go play in the
opportunity of a
Olympics?
lifetime, absolutely.
But yeah, it just makes for more conversation and more, talk between other people in the country and like. Because Michigan's got a lot of publicity, rightfully so.
Yeah,
they made history last year.
Right.
But a lot of teams have, over the Christmas, they canceled one of their games because they had a very short roster. And they got a lot of flack for that across the rest of the country. So I don't think anybody's going to feel sorry for them with this. And it is what it is. I mean, this is a very rare thing. The NHL was supposed to go, and then this all of a sudden changes, and they've got to decide, okay, these are the best players that we can find, and who's going to pass up going to the Olympics? It's really hard.
No doubt. Okay, so that's a big story. Then there was a huge story out of Minnesota this weekend. Jack LaFontaine.
It's like it's all at once.
Right. I mean, this is the Mike Richter Award winner from last year.
All-American.
This is the best goalie in the country. And he calls his coach on a Sunday afternoon and says, I'm going to play for the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Again, they have a shortened roster because of COVID. They have injuries.
Yeah.
So this is an NHL team saying, you know what? Come play for us. And he said, okay, in the middle of the season.
Yeah. I mean, that is one of the NHL and the hockey world's a little different.
Yeah.
You're the guys that are getting drafted and go back to play in college. That's just the thing that happens in hockey. And LaFontaine leaving you add that on to the Olympics. It's like losing a guy for Olympics, but he's not even going to be coming back. I don't blame him. He was drafted by Carolina. They are desperate. They had injuries and COVID issues in goal. He actually ended up playing last night.
Wow.
He came in as the backup to Freddie Anderson, and they were losing, and he popped in at the end and got some playing time. So you can't blame him.
No, of course not.
But
Yeah.
it still leaves, Bob Moskow saying, he's saying the right things, but of course that's a huge loss. There's no way to dip around that. So they're trying to find another guy. They have recruits coming in next year that one of them, there's rumors that could possibly be coming in, not a savior. I mean, just as depth.
Right.
I mean, he might get a shot at some point. Justin Close is the guy that they're going to go with at first.
And he came in with LaFontaine, right?
Right.
Pretty high recruited.
Really played, though,
right.
at all.
I think I saw 28 minutes.
Right.
Yes.
And then he played. They had exhibition games over the late in Christmas break. They played the U.S. Development Program team.
Okay.
And St. Thomas, which is a brand new Division I school.
Right.
And LaFontaine didn't play a minute in those games.
Okay.
It's almost like they knew. They didn't know. But, let these guys get some playing time just in case LaFontaine would get hurt. Not to leave for the NHL, but it was that instead. So,
okay,
wild
so
times.
Strange times indeed for the Gophers. And yet, as we talked about, Minnesota and Michigan right up there at the top. You've got Ohio State and Notre Dame in that discussion as well. Kind of give us a sense of, again, there are a lot of variables. I think we made it clear in the first few minutes. There are a lot of variables here, but how do you see this playing out in the Big Ten?
Oh, now you're asking, put in that spot. Well, before the year, it was Minnesota and Michigan. Okay, they're going to fight it out. Who's going to be the next teams? And quite frankly, Ohio State was picked by the media and the coaches to finish last. Well, that's not been the case. They've had some freshmen. You never know what you're going to get from freshmen. And their best players have been freshmen, and they've had some transfers. So they've elevated. And then Notre Dame has just been what Notre Dame does. Jeff Jackson has built that program up. And they are in the mix. They're all within 2 points of each other. You got about 10 games left. 12 games. They're actually right in the middle. They played 12 conference games. They're right there now. Especially with this news, the Olympics, and with LaFontaine, it is a 4-team race for the Big Ten title. And the way how they work the standings where you get 3 points for a win now. It's kind of like that European soccer way. I mean, everything can flip in one weekend, and then it can flip back the next. So for me, I don't know. Now I think it's real that Notre Dame and Ohio State can win this. Before you're like, okay, they're right there, and they're going to be there in the end. They could be NCAA tournament teams, but now I think they're seeing, okay, this is a conference we can take.
Obviously, a ton of these games on the Big Ten Network. We've got Ohio State and Notre Dame coming up tomorrow, Saturday. Yes, very good. First game of the series, yes, you'll be on the call.
Yes.
And then the first game of the series is on Big Ten Plus, I believe.
Big Ten Plus
tonight,
tomorrow,
right?
and then,
Or is it the other way
tonight,
around?
tonight.
Yeah, tonight.
And then
Big Ten
tomorrow
Plus.
night, 7 o'clock Central time.
Yeah. All right. Paul Campanegri, have a great call. Thanks for shedding
Dave.
some light on
Appreciate
some
it.
wild times.